ba ba dum ba dum 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 ba ba dum ba dum 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 ba ba dum ba dum 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 ba ba dum.
Give thanks to the Lord, for He is good.
His love endures forever.
Give thanks to the Lord of Lords.
His love endures forever.
Him who among us does great wonders.
His love endures forever.
Give thanks to the God of gods.
His love endures forever.
Give thanks to the Lord, for His love endures forever. Sing praise to His name, for His promises are good. Give thanks to the Lord, for His love endures forever. Sing praise to His name, His love reigns forevermore.
Dum 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 ba ba dum ba dum 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 ba ba dum ba.
To Him who calls us from our sorrow,
His love endures forever.
freed us from our enemies.
His love endures forever.
Who by His wisdom made the heavens
His love endures forever.
and spread the earth upon the sea.
His love endures forever.
Give thanks to the Lord, for His love endures forever. Sing praise to His name, for His promises are good. Give thanks to the Lord, for His love endures forever. Sing praise to His name, His love reigns forevermore.
Dum 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 ba ba dum ba dum 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 ba ba dum ba.
To Him who calls us His disciples,
His love endures forever.
who sent His Son to die on the tree.
His love endures forever.
Him who came low to call us higher,
His love endures forever.
and by His truth has set us free.
His love endures forever.
Give thanks to the Lord, for His love endures forever. Sing praise to His name, for His promises are good. Give thanks to the Lord, for His love endures forever. Sing praise to His name, His love reigns forevermore. Give
Thanks to the Lord, for His love endures forever.
Sing praise
to His name,
for His promises are good. Give
thanks
thanks
to the Lord, for His love endures forever.
Sing praise to His name, His love reigns forevermore.
Hello everyone, coming at you from my office today, but I hope you're doing well, staying safe and things, and having a great week so far. Today we're going to continue going through the book Jesus the Same, which is basically a later printing of the book The Character of Jesus, written by Charles Edward Jefferson. And as the title suggests there, it's a fantastic book that goes through different aspects of the character of Jesus. And as disciples of Christ, this means that we are learners, we are students of Jesus. And so looking at his character, taking time to reflect on how does his character compare to mine? What can I do to become more like him? I mean, that is the bread and butter. That's the very stuff of what it means to be a disciple, a follower of Jesus. And so today we're going to look at the chapter entitled The Firmness of Jesus, which is referring to the firmness of conviction that Jesus had. His unwavering conviction to do what was right and pleasing to God, no matter who was trying to influence him otherwise. But to start things off, I want you to think about, for yourself, in your own life, who have been some of the biggest people, the biggest influences in your life? Who are some people who have influenced you the most in your life? Because the truth is, we're all influenced by someone, right? I think for myself, certainly my parents, my family, my wife, specific mentors in the faith over the years who have certainly helped me. I mean, these are some of the people that come to my mind when I think of the most influential people in my life. But like I said, we're all influenced by someone. We're all influenced by something. We're taking our cues from somewhere about how best to live and conduct ourselves. And this is an inescapable thing, right? Even right now in your life today, you are being influenced by someone. You are being influenced by or maybe perhaps it's something. You're taking your cues from somewhere. Again, this is just kind of inescapable. Even referees who are hired to be objective in their outlook. Studies have shown that referees will give slight advantageous calls to the home team more often than they will the visiting team. And again, they don't know exactly. It could just be the crowd noise and the way the crowd gets into rooting for the home team. And referees are humans, and they get swept up into it. And so even they get influenced by others. We're all being influenced by someone from somewhere. Yet when we look at Jesus and his life and his convictions from the Gospels, he was remarkably steadfast. He was able to have unwavering convictions, unaffected by the influence of others. And we see this in a number of examples. You know, the Pharisees were an influential religious group in Jesus' day, but Jesus opposed some of their thinking when it came to the Sabbath specifically. I mean, they wanted to honor the Sabbath, and Jesus would want to honor the Sabbath, but they put so many hedges around the Sabbath that when it came to even helping a person, doing good to another human being on the Sabbath, they would say, don't do it. Do it on another day. You can help them out tomorrow. You can be good to them tomorrow, but not today. And we come across a certain interaction in Mark chapter 3 where Jesus sees a man with a shriveled hand, a deformed hand, and he wants to help this man, but the Pharisees are looking to see if Jesus would actually help him because it was the Sabbath. And Jesus asks him, what do you think? Do you think it's lawful to do what's right on the Sabbath or not? And of course, this puts them in a hot spot. And Jesus does what's right. He heals the man because he was uninfluenced, unwavered in his conviction to do what was right, even if it was on the Sabbath. We read a few weeks ago in Matthew 16 where Jesus, he asked his disciples, who do you say I am? And Peter goes, you're the Messiah. And Jesus praises Peter for that and then says, you're right, but here's what it means that I'm the Messiah, that when we go to Jerusalem, I'm going to be put on trial, I'm going to be killed, but I will raise back to life. And that concept of the Messiah was completely different than what Peter had in mind. And so Peter takes Jesus aside and he tries to influence Jesus, saying, no, that will never happen to you. That's not the kind of Messiah you're going to be. That's not the kind of Messiah you should be. And yet Jesus here and his best friend trying to influence him, he resists the influence of his best friend Peter. I mean, he actually says, get behind me, Satan. You don't have in mind the things of God, but the things of men. Jesus wasn't going to be swayed from the kind of Messiah he was called to be, and he was, even if his best friend had different ideas. No, so, Jesus resisted the influence of some of the thinking of the religious system of his day, some of the thinking of his best friends of his day. But where it really gets hard to resist the influence of others is when it comes to our family. But we see this even in Jesus. In John chapter 7, it says Jesus' siblings came up to him and they said, hey, clearly you want to be a public figure. Well, there's this big feast or festival going on in Jerusalem. There's going to be, crowds and crowds of people there. You ought to go there. That will help enhance your prestige in the eyes of people. You'll get more exposure to people because you're trying to be a public figure, right? And Jesus resisted that suggestion and that kind of influence. And he goes, you don't understand what I'm about. You don't understand what I'm trying to do. For you, any time is right, but I'm not operating like that. And I'm not going to be coerced into doing something like that. He resisted the influence of his siblings. But then what's probably most remarkable is Jesus resisting the influence of his own mom. In Mark chapter 3, his mom is searching for him because Mary is concerned that maybe Jesus is losing his mind a little bit. Let him come back home. Let mom take care of him. Show him some love and a little bit to kind of help him get some rest and things like that. And Jesus says, who are my mom and my brothers and sisters? Anyone who does the will of God, that's my mom and my brother and my sister. I mean, it's a remarkable moment where he even doesn't give in to kind of the urgings of his mom when what his mom wanted was something different than what God wanted. His mom in that moment wanted to get Jesus off his own mission, and Jesus wouldn't even be swayed by that. And I think, man, that's remarkable. If my mom called me up, if my mom was texting me, if my mom was reaching out saying, we need to talk, can I please get your attention here? I have something I need to tell you. I mean, there's very few things that I would not drop at that very moment and give my full attention to my mom. And yet Jesus was able to not be swayed by his mom. Charles Edward Jefferson, who wrote this book that we're going through, he says this about Jesus and his firmness of conviction. He says, but when we come to Jesus of Nazareth, we are in the presence of a man whom nobody swerved or dominated, who is so free from the bias of his race and so clean of the spirit of his age that he seems to belong to all races and all ages. He's not the son of David, but the son of man, just genuinely, supremely human. Hey, quick note here. Jesus is referred to as the son of David in the Bible, and to be sure, he was the son of David. So what Charles Edward Jefferson is saying there when he says he's not the son of David, but the son of man, he's just trying to emphasize the title that Jesus preferred most for himself, which was the Son of Man, to speak to the greater reach of humanity that Jesus had. But just to be sure, he was the son of David as well. But he goes on to say this. He's not a citizen of the first century only, but the contemporary of each succeeding generation, immersed in an ocean of mighty forces which we beat upon him furiously through every hour of his career. He resisted them all successfully by the indomitable energy of a victorious will, living a life unique in its beauty and achieving a work unmarred by the limitations either of time or place. And when Jesus was so able to stand firm in his convictions that here we are millennia afterward, just affected by it, impacted by it, in awe of it. You might be thinking, what were some of the core principles and convictions that Jesus would not be deterred from? I mean, as students of Jesus, as disciples of Jesus, that's a very important question for us to ask. It's a very important answer for us to know so that we can then make sure that that conviction more and more becomes a part of our lives. Well, let's read a passage where I think Jesus shows us one of his unwavering core principles. It's in John chapter 8. And in this passage, we're just going to kind of jump into the middle of a dispute Jesus is having with some people. But in John chapter 8, we'll begin in verse 27. It says, they did not understand that he, that's Jesus, was telling them about his Father. So Jesus said, when you've lifted up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am he, and that I do nothing on my own, but speak just what the Father has taught me. The one who sent me is with me. He has not left me alone, for I always do what pleases him. Yeah, I want to draw our attention to that last line. Jesus says, I always do what pleases him. I mean, think about that. That's remarkable. That's that's astounding. I always do what pleases God. The one that Jesus let influence him more than any other was God. He took the teachings of the Pharisees, he took the suggestions of friends and family, he took the established values of his culture, and he sifted all of that through the filter of what is pleasing to God. And while we are influenced by family and we're influenced by friends and by culture, as disciples of Jesus, we ought to always seek to please God above everything else. Because this is what our Master, what Jesus, our Lord, what He did. I think today there are more ways to consume media, to consume entertainment, to be exposed to marketing than ever before. And because of that, I think there are more ways we can be influenced by others than ever before. But as students of Jesus, we try to imitate Him and sift all of that through the filter of, is this pleasing to God? I remember growing up hearing a guy preaching on this passage. And he too was so struck by Jesus saying, I always do what pleases the Father. And so in preparing for the sermon and things like that, he said, all right, I'm gonna take a day. And he found a way to kind of set an alarm for each waking hour of the day. And this was before smartphones, so I forget exactly how he did it, but he found a way to remind himself each waking hour of the day, every hour, and when the alarm or whatever would go off, he would take a few moments to stop and reflect and go, how did I live this last hour? What did I do with my time? What stuff did I consume? What were my thoughts? What were my feelings? What were my interactions like with other people? And he would think about all of that through the lens of, was it pleasing to God or not? And he wouldn't do this, in a harsh way. It would be a way to kind of learn maybe perhaps some of his blind spots, some of the different things that were influencing him. Did I live in a way that pleased God or not? And if not, what happened? What can I learn from that? How can I become more like Jesus in this area? Now, you might think that that's a radical step for him to take him, but I encourage you, if you're a student, a disciple, a follower of Jesus, this next week, that would be a great experiment for you to do. We all have smartphones now, so we can easily set an alarm for every waking hour of our day, just at the top of the hour. And it's not like you need a ton of time to just to stop and reflect. If you just take a few moments to think, how did I live this past hour? Was it in a way that pleased God or not? And you can maybe learn and identify certain influences that perhaps are pulling you away from what is pleasing to God's sight. Maybe you can actually learn and identify some influences that actually help you live in a way that is pleasing and honoring to God. But I encourage you to do that experiment sometime this week. To take time to reflect on, how am I living? And is it pleasing to God or not? That will take some honest reflection, some humble reflection. But as disciples of Jesus, I think we need to reflect on this characteristic of Jesus, his firmness of conviction, and try to imitate him in his deep convictions to do what is right in the eyes of God above all else. May we do what's pleasing to him, and may he be honored and glorified by our lives and in all we do. To him be the glory. Amen.